Vital, our 12-month practitioner training program, is back for its third cohort starting January 2024. The last two cohorts have been nothing short of transformational both personally and professionally for everyone involved, and here's a little taste of what makes it so special. Vital is a process-oriented curriculum, focusing on multidisciplinary perspectives and wisdom traditions, guiding students through powerful inner work and building practical skills to support lifelong growth. Through lectures, study groups, elective modules, retreats, and process papers, you'll have all the support you need to develop your own vision and model for entering this exciting field. Applications for Vital are open until December the 20th, with early bird discounts available until November the 19th. We invite you to apply early to improve your chances of being accepted into this global community of the next generation of psychedelic wellness practitioners. So, head to vitalpsychedelictraining.com to download our full course curriculum and learn more about this transformative journey.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. This is Joe. Today on the show, we have Mike Finoia. How are you today, Mike?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Excited to connect. We've been kind of back and forth on socials for a bit now, and we finally pulled it off. You're on Psychedelics Today, finally. So thank you for joining us.
Finally. I could finally sleep. I've been waiting.
Some people try really hard. I think you tried appropriately. So thank you for sticking with us and making it happen. So man, let's dig in. So I know you're a stand-up comedian. You've done some work with Impractical Jokers, I believe, as well. But what's your kind of career look like, and how'd you get into this psychedelic topic?
Hilarious. What's my career look like? That's the $1 million question, bud. No, how'd I get into the psychedelic thing? I mean, that goes way earlier than comedy and all of that stuff. I mean, that just, it begins for me with the Grateful Dead and my walls. You know, some kids had like Larry Bird measuring things and Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan, you know, like I had Pigpen and Jerry and Bobby and, you know, glow in the dark stars on my ceiling and stuff. And so early on, being interested in what else was out there, I kind of was born with this thought that, like, I don't know about born, but as a child, just like, this can't be it. This totally can't be it, you know? And laying there looking at the clouds and stars and stuff. But psychedelics have always been something, I think I used them carelessly early on. And then into my 40s, I just turned 44 a couple days ago. And the past couple of years have been like medicine, life-saving type stuff, you know, and transformative work. And it's helped me with comedy because it's gotten me a lot more vulnerable and a lot more, I don't want to say I don't care as much, but I don't care about the stuff I can't control as much anymore. I think that's a thing that always kind of, you know, when you feel out of control or when you feel anxious or when you feel whatever, you kind of get, you know, lassoed into the stuff you can't control. And it's been refreshing to know I can just let that stuff go and focus on the stuff that I actually can control, which is like, you know, my work and helping other people and stuff like that. So,
yeah, right on. So excited to have you on. I don't know that we've had too many stand-ups on. You know, in the psychedelic space, we have a couple that are kind of staples and show up at all the conferences. But I'm just really happy that there's more and more comedians coming forward about their use. Comedians have, in a really interesting way, you know, if we want to give Joe Rogan a little credit, he's kind of like set the stage for a lot of comedians to be able to come out about it. It's been a risky topic to come out about, I think. But I don't know. Do you feel like there's been any kind of major influence from comedians coming forward and talking about their experiences?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think, you know, Duncan Trussell is someone who I think has done a fantastic, Shane Moss, you know, just to name two. And then like, you know, the Reggie Watts and, you know, there's been like Have a Good Trip. There's been storytelling shows, you know, Ari Shaffir for a while had like a storytelling show where they would talk about trips and things like that. But I think it was, I think that what I'm, I can't speak for anybody else, but what I'm trying to do is sort of talk about, I'm not trying to tell psychedelic stories where it's like, oh my God, I, tripped my nuts off and ended up like, running naked through a Costco or something, like it's a thing where I'm kind of like trying to talk about how I had the worst year of my life. I decided I was going to like really go for it and get to the bottom of my shit and stay down there until I figured it out and then reemerge, hopefully better for the journey. And that's what I'm trying to personally work on stage. And it's talking about psychedelics, but it's also talking about therapy, and it's also talking about introspection and vulnerability and rough experiences, and trying to figure out how to talk through it with hope instead of with doom and gloom. I think anybody who's at all experienced with psychedelics knows that nothing comes for free. And sometimes you pay a price for the work that you do, and Ken Kesey said that early on, and I always appreciated that. And you have to sometimes fight through some pretty horrific experiences where a minute seems like a year, and so on and so forth. But where do you come out on the other end? And I think that's the stuff that a lot of people are starting to open up about that stuff, and I have to believe it's 2.5 years or whatever of like not being able to perform. And, the pandemic just kind of forced introspection and things like that. We're all aging. And also there's just so many comics now that it's just like, I feel that the only thing I could do is just go deeper in order to like stand out in any way. So it's a huge part of my life, and it'd be weird not to talk about it. I feel like, but I want to do it with respect. I'm not going up saying everyone do this, because it's definitely not for everyone, So.
Yeah, for sure. Like, have you tried to incorporate this more into some of your acts?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing. Like, I came out with a special recently. It's called Don't Let Me Down. It's on YouTube, November 9th. And I mentioned briefly my ketamine use for treatment-resistant depression. That's kind of it. And then now this new hour I'm working on is like heavily into it and talking about it and talking about the revelations I had on large doses of psilocybin. And it's interesting because I'm trying to work out the material and figure out what's funny, but also just some of the stuff I'm saying that's like from my gut is getting like laughter and applause. And also people are kind of coming up afterwards and they're like, that's really awesome that you're talking about this. And I'm like, that's neat. Like I have to pay attention to that,
Right. It's interesting. Like your art form can make such a tremendous difference for people.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's, just basic funny jokes. Sometimes they're extraordinarily meaningful for people. Right. And like storytelling done in a funny way, I think is really just great comedy.
Oh, it's incredible. It's really incredible. But I there are like, and comedy is great for, like a themed show, like a storytelling show, craziest trip experience or craziest, like This Is Not Happening. Ari's show was super cool because it was just a bunch of different, I told a mushroom story on there, and it was more of a funny story of just a silly experience I had on a lot of mushrooms as a kid, What I'm doing now, I guess, and again, it's just me. I'm trying to really like trying to do something different where it's like I'm telling the whole story, where psychedelics is just a component of it, or how I had difficult experiences on, for instance, okay, like the first time I did ketamine therapy, and you get an IV and you get it in your hand, and I have extreme anxiety, and I'm going into this like kind of really nervous, and not nervous about the psychedelics. I'm nervous about the needle. Like that's the part that I'm nervous about. Like I'm not nervous about the trip. I'm excited for the trip. But what happens to me is I get worked up over the sound of the medical instruments being opened. I don't like when someone taps your veins to like get your vein ready. I don't like how quiet it is, and I don't like how sterile and that made me kind of like almost forget to breathe. And my first experience doing ketamine, I passed out cold. Like before I even got to ketamine, like the needle hit my hand and I was like out. And I'm laying on the ground and it's like, uh-oh. So like the place I did it had all these leather recliners everywhere. And then there was like one hospital bed in the corner. And that's where I did my my ketamine. That was like my bed, you know?
Wow.
And it was just this thing of kind of like, even this can't go easy, you know? And it was something where I was at my wit's end with like depression and anxiety and stuff, where I was just like, if this doesn't work, I don't know what else to do. And I had to have one more hurdle with this needle thing. And it's not the first time it happened, and it probably won't be the last, but it's just that feeling of anticipation. And I'm trying to talk about that on stage. Like, to me, that's what like those minutia, that little detail, to me, that tells the whole story. You know, it's not just that I became a spot on a leopard during my trip. It's hitting the floor beforehand, you know?
That's wild. So that was an infusion, Mike? Was it a long one, or do you know the dose?
I don't know the exact dosage. I've done now a total of, I think, so yes, it was an infusion. And the way the infusions work are, it's about a 90-minute experience. Turns out to be about 2 hours, because you kind of sit and, you know, come in, come out. But it's 45 minutes of ketamine, and it comes on gently but quickly, and it fades very gently. That's a thing I kind of appreciated a lot about the ketamine experiences I've had, is that they've all been somewhat gentle. And I don't mean it in like I didn't deal with difficult things. It's just from what I've heard from other folks, I didn't have a lot of the negative experiences, even physical. You know, I heard some people had nausea and kind of a little bit of vertigo-y type feeling at the end or anything, but I didn't have anything. It felt very, very peaceful and very gentle. And the first 4 weeks, you do it twice a week. You go Monday, I went Monday, Thursday, and you do twice a week. And it's in tandem with therapy and talking about things that, you know, you're kind of dealing with and working with. And then from there, we kind of went with a plan on how to do, you know, taper it off, but continuously do it on a less frequent basis. So over the past, let's see, this was from like April to April or April to March. I probably did about 26 or 27 infusions.
Whoa.
And yeah. And I've done hypnotherapy for a while. I've done a couple of guided mushroom trips and stuff. And everyone who I've worked with has kind of said, like, I'm a great candidate. Like, I go quickly to I'm like, I'm in, I'm out. You know what I mean? Like, I get there, I do my work, and then I'm kind of like, I don't know. It's interesting. I did a pretty, I mean, was it like 3.5 grams or so of Golden Teacher with a guide. And I even feel weird calling her a guide. She was just there when I needed her. She was perfect. Just perfect. And I got in to the, you know, that frame of mind, and I got where I had to go, and I got a ton of work done. And then I got out, and she's like, it's kind of amazing that you're like out already. And it wasn't like out. I was just in that afterglow faster than maybe the average, you know, I don't know. But, I'm a good candidate. So like, I feel like when I'm getting ready for the ketamine to kind of hit, like I'm sort of already 1 foot in the pool. Maybe it's just from practicing meditation or whatever, but I'm like ready to go. Like when it's time to go, I'm ready to go. And that helps quite a bit, I think.
Totally. I think, yeah, meditation can help. I think there's also, it's not discredited. I think there's some real power in the introspection required to do comedy.
Yeah.
For like understanding your psyche.
Definitely.
So I'm sure you're racking your brain for things to like poke fun at yourself about, right? Once in a while.
Sometimes you don't have to rack too hard. It's right there. But yeah, I know what you mean. Sometimes you don't have to rack much at all. But yeah, no, it's definitely like, yeah, I'm spending a lot of time inward, and that becomes that's a blessing. I say this a lot, but it's like a double-edged butter knife. You know what I mean? Like, it's great, but it's also potentially harmful because you get wrapped up in that. And especially now with, a comic, just like anything else, really, a podcaster, a entrepreneur, a businessman, whatever. You're 10 different things, You're the director of social media. You're the director of advertising and marketing and promotions. And, you have your art and you have the thing you like to do, but then there's 100 other gigs that come with it. And you have to kind of stay on top of all those things. And that could get extremely overwhelming. And if you already have that imposter voice or that critic that's beating the hell out of you all the time, it's more ammo or more fuel for their fire, So it's nice to me, psychedelics have been, it's almost like just a vacation. It's like a way to shut that crap off and get to what really matters. And I know that's not the case for everyone, but I really feel like it's where, there's, when they talk about transcendental meditation, they talk about how like the surface has all the bubbles. And when you meditate, you kind of get down to the bottom where it's silent and where the bubbles begin, I feel the same way about psychedelics, where I'd be able to kind of get away from the chatter and just get like massive amounts of work done in a short period of time.
Yeah, I love that. So are these, for you, like I've had a pretty big ketamine injection, but not an infusion. And it was pretty far out. So are sometimes your experiences like pretty extreme in the ketamine space and sometimes they're a little mild, or do you kind of have a pattern?
In the very beginning, and I'm glad you asked this because I've been trying to figure it out a little bit more in retrospect, but I kind of had this like almost like an inflated feeling where I was invisible to myself, but I could kind of like almost float to the top of the room and look down on the room. Very disassociative immediately and very out of body immediately, but also kind of like numb to my fight or flight response that I was working through. So like, I'll give you an example. There was one initial experience where I kind of felt like I was traveling. I feel like I'm always traveling during the ketamine trips. Like I'm never in one place. I'm always in movement, which I always thought was kind of strange. But I had this feeling like I was traveling towards like a waterfall of sand. And it was just like an avalanche of like grains of sand. And I felt myself going towards it. And I had this notion like, I'm going to die. Like if I hit this, I'm going to die. But I couldn't stop myself. And I didn't have the mechanism to stop myself or to wake up or anything. It wasn't a bad experience. It was like it shut off the inherent fear thing. And the thing that would always make me go towards catastrophic, worst case scenario all the time. And I just approached that waterfall of sand and I went right through it and I was totally fine. And now I'm in another place. I'm in a whole other vision, a whole other experience. And I remember kind of feeling like I was looking behind me going like, oh, I made it. Like I was okay. And it just gave me this sort of trust, surrender, and just let this be what it's going to be. And I had a lot of those. Claustrophobia is something I've always had an issue with. And I remember having this feeling like I was almost laying in like train tracks and I was covered like, very like things were tight to my sides and something went above me but I didn't care. Like I had this sort of, it helped me experience the things I thought I was supposed to be afraid of more honestly, or more, more openly. It's kind of like, you think there's a monster in the bed and you turn the lights on and it's like, there's nothing under there, it's just an old coat or whatever. And, it was intense. It was there. It was real and it was vivid, but I never felt like, scared or unsafe or anything like that. Like I have felt on perhaps a little too much LSD or something like that.
Oof. I can relate. Yeah.
Now can I ask you similarly?
Sure.
Did the intramuscular, is that how you did? Have you had your ketamine experiences?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Now, how was that for you?
So I was doing it outside of a therapy context, but it was administered by a clinician. Thank goodness. I don't know how to use needles on my own yet.
No.
Someday.
No, thank you.
And I was a little nervous, but I was also, I've had enough kind of tryptamine experiences and inner space experiences to know it, just another one of those.
Mm-hmm.
Might get my ass kicked, maybe not. But it was pretty far out. Like my no anxiety, really weird. Definitely was very comfortable with dying if that was the end of my life.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. That was like a really big, it was like a first, I suppose. It was like being at peace with dying. Not like I'm actively terminal or anything, more than we all are. But
right.
It was, it was fascinating. I don't have the compulsion to like do it more. If it was available and affordable, I would, for sure. I've been doing some lozenge sessions on my own, and those are a lot lighter, like substantially lighter.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. Yeah, I got prescribed a bunch for pretty cheap, and that was lovely that I got to keep them. But I would want to explore it more. That said, I'm definitely more interested in things like tryptamines in terms of like the content of the experience.
Okay.
But I'm sure there's some substantial depth to be explored in the ketamine space. You've spent a lot more time there.
Well,
than I have for sure.
Yeah, and I have a couple thoughts on what you had just said, and it's interesting to hear the way that I spoke with someone recently about just the bioavailability of the various ways you can do ketamine. And it seems intravenous is like a 98% bioavailability. Intramuscular is right around there, maybe a little bit less. And then the lozenges and the sublingual ones tend to be somewhere, I think, maybe did he say like 30 to 40%, 50%? So it's a significantly less, of an experience. And I don't know, I'm interested to see what the intramuscular experience is like. There's an escape hatchy type feeling, I guess, when you do the IV, because it's literally could be shut off it's just a flick of a wrist and you're done,
right.
And that's something of a little bit of a warm blanket of a feeling where you can't do that other ways and other, experiences and stuff. I have found that there are, if you dig a little bit, I've found folks that are offering ketamine treatments that are retired anesthesiologists coming back and, doing IV treatments in tandem with a APRN or talk therapist or whatever. And it's not as expensive. I guess the medication is extremely affordable. It's a very cheap.
So it's about $7 a gram physician cost, roughly speaking, or at least it was last year or the year before.
And you're doing way less than a gram when you're getting it intravenously, I believe, I think. I think so. I mean, I don't know, but I think it's, it's based on your weight. And also to give people background that might be, interested in how it, in relation to like mental health and stuff. I mean, I had to take questionnaires throughout the whole experience, a GAD-7, which I think stands for Generalized Anxiety Disorder Assessment. And it was these kind of, never, rarely, sometimes, most times, always, or, and I always have a fear that something bad might happen. I feel like I've let my family down. I often can't sit still. I'd be better off dead. This and that, and basically that plus my weight, my actual body weight, I think was the determinant for the dosage. And I've come from a lot of experience with SSRIs and SNRIs and benzos and all that stuff, self-medicating, just to shut the chatter off. And I got to tell you, the mushroom experiences I had were, life-changingly profound, flipping the album over to, get out of that groove and hear a new tune, things that I'll never forget, but it goes away. I mean, not the notions don't go away, the lessons don't go away, but the anxiety will creep back, Ketamine in tandem with cognitive behavioral therapy and really like working hard. Like I did like a good hard, like 12 to 16 months of like hard work on myself. And I feel better than ever. And it's in a lasting way that I have had experiences that would normally throw me for a huge loop anxiety wise, but I just don't set up there anymore. It's almost like I've rewired that like process of dealing with things that, I made an analogy to how bad my anxiety got for a while was like a normal anxiety attack would feel like you have a little fire on your stovetop, and you just put it out. My whole kitchen was like engulfed in flames. Like I just had no idea how to even find the door. Like all my waking hours were just like panic and anxiety and, this definitely, I went to that doctor and said, basically like, I don't know what else to do. Like, I really hope this works because I don't know what else I have in me. And it did, it helped quite a bit. So I think that if you, and it does suck that it's like, why isn't, and I know this is the work that Rick's doing and the work that Maps is doing and, we're making strides, but I really wish that all of this was available to folks at an affordable, rate and at an affordable price. I mean, you do it through a doctor, your insurance covers it. You may have to meet a deductible of some sort, but that's how I was able to do it. And undoubtedly it saved my life.
No, I love hearing that.
Yeah.
And wholeheartedly agree with you, man. Like the accessibility part is going to be really hard. Like, how are we going to solve that? I know there's some interesting organizations doing some research that will, help support the argument. So that'll be really good.
Mm.
So yeah, I think it's going to come in time. So I kind of want to like talk about the entertainment biz and the stress there a little bit. Because it's, you kind of hinted at it a little bit by how you're not just a comic, right? You have to do 15 things at once, kind of juggle them.
Yeah.
And it can be really stressful. But like, what do some people not know about how intense or stressful the entertainment business can be?
Well, I think, first and foremost, all right, someone said a long time ago to me, and it makes complete sense as I age, that like the amount of years that you're doing stand-up comedy is almost like equivalent to like the age of a child. So like if you've been doing it a year, you're like a 1-year-old. And if you're doing it 2 years, you're like a 2-year-old. And you go through that maturation process. And it's hilariously true. Like it really, really is, like you get 2 years in, that's that terrible twos where you're kind of like, I want that. How come I can't have that? Like, and if you don't get your way, you get, you're looking at the, gigs other people get and you're like, but I've been doing this a year now. Like that's nothing. But at the time you're thinking like, so there's that growth process we're all going through all the time. I think one of the things that, and again, it's hard to speak for anybody else, but for me, I think one of the things that's the hardest is like having like a working definition of success really makes a huge difference. Like having a goal that you can attain if you put your mind to it and stuff, I mean, I think that if we get wrapped up by looking at other people's paper and see how, good someone else is doing or how maybe we think they're successful, or we think they're famous, or we think, this person's getting this and they're selling out this gig and they're getting this opportunity. I mean, we're all on a different path. So, and that'll weigh you down that's a deep, dark rabbit hole to fall into. And it sucks some people up and drowns them. Some people just don't get out of it. But I try to I guess, I don't know if it's gratitude. I don't like throwing that word around. It's used quite a bit, but I think it's just the thing about constantly checking in with yourself about reminding yourself how good you're doing, and how, I've had some people, I look at some folks' career and I go, damn, I really wish I was doing those gigs. And then other people look at me and they go, damn, I really wish I was doing your gigs. And it's like, oh, we all have our platform that we see the world from, and we all have our perception, and we get wrapped up sometimes in that, and especially in entertainment, and especially in, right now there's people that are totally nailed social media, millions and millions and millions of TikTok followers and Instagram followers and all that stuff. And it's catapulted their careers. And now they're, selling out theaters and selling out, they're putting butts in the seats. So is it wrong? No, it's just a different path that I maybe did, or that someone that I looked up to did, or whatever. And you have two choices. You can look at it from a place of fear and be angry at them and whatever, or you can look at it as you accept it. Good for them. It might not be my my path, but it's a path, and to be okay with that, I think, is an important thing. I have to look at a year and a half ago, I didn't want to leave my house. I was so anxious, and so in my own head about just going through a rough time. And this year I recorded a special, and I did it all myself pretty much, and putting it out there, and I'm happy with the content. I'm happy with the presentation, and that's important to remember, because it's easy to forget. You know what I mean? Because we're just we're bombarded with just everything all the time. And it's sometimes hard to just put it down and go yeah, no, things are okay.
So you had a lot of early time with psychedelics, and then it seems like your relationship radically changed in relatively recent history, right? Can you talk about what some of the early use looked like? You said just, being pretty young, eating mushrooms and being into Jerry, but I've certainly gone too far myself with recreational drug use, and I don't really regret it, but you can keep it in balance, kind of how I put it. But could you kind of talk about what that looked like, and what you think it might have done to you, or how it might have helped form you?
Yeah. A lot of it had to do with going to concerts. Most of my drug use had to do with going to concerts. It was a great place to let loose and be around like-minded people, and it just kind of seemed like it went hand in hand with the experience. A lot of it had to do with just sort of, frankly, I grew up drinking beers and standing around a keg with my friends and taking acid and giggling and laughing and having a great time. And if you drink alcohol and you're on psychedelics, you could kind of drink a lot. And maybe it was just my youth or whatever. I don't really do that at all now. For me now, it's more of an experience. I'm doing it for a purpose. In the late 90s, I guess, early 2000s, there was gel tabs were around, and that was a very fun, clean LSD that seemed pretty manageable. There was a lot of MDMA and mushrooms, and it was escapism. It was like I said before, and also tons of smoking pot and stuff like that. But it was more just kind of the part of the experience of just going out there. And I hit the road pretty hard following Fish around the country, and music has always been a huge part of my life. So I never really shied away from any kind of mind expanding stuff at shows. Not every concert, but fairly decent amount. And it was always a good time. And I was always around people that, I felt safe with and I loved and stuff like that. But I remember getting a little too, almost bored if I didn't do it. And that's when I realized I kind of had to like maybe stop for a bit and just sort of reevaluate like what it even meant. And there was a long time I went without doing anything. Like, I mean, probably, geez, maybe 15 years or so, 10, 15 years, starting.
It's a pretty good run.
Yeah. Yeah. I took a little break and, I was getting going with stand up and, primarily drinking more then. And that's not really a part of my life anymore. I think when you start doing comedy, it's almost sort of like a weird, like it's like finding a society, finding like an underground club that you belong to. And it's just this thing of like, you do comedy now, so you can go to any club and you can hang out and you can just, even if you don't have a show, you can like kind of just chat with other comics. And it felt very like Clubhouse-ish starting out. And you just learn, you sit and listen and bullshit and, you get to know your friends and you just kind of casually booze, and, I just don't, I mean, it's not, I'm not like 100% sober, but I don't drink to any excess. I'll have a beer or two for the taste. But yeah, the early psychedelic stuff for me was kind of it was just a way to just laugh for hours and hours and hours with my friends. Like it was just all about like just letting loose and having like a memorable experience with that group of friends, where now, frankly, I'd probably prefer to do them by myself or in some type of setting where I'm like getting something done,
Yeah, that makes sense.
One of the things that genuinely fascinates me with psychedelics is just how much you can get done in one sitting, like how much decluttering you could get done in one session. You really can like, if you go into it with like a focus and sometimes you don't even need a focus. It just happens. You just get what you need. And, you can really come out of it feeling way more like organized and compartmentalized. And, I think of it as like performance enhancing in a way,
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that because it's like you have, you haven't done an oil change in, 80,000 miles or something, right? You could finally start getting some things repaired in there and working a little more cleanly.
Yeah. And while you're at it, throw some new spark plugs in there.
Yeah. And, there's so much energy, Mike, that people put into, I guess, trying to feel okay.
Yeah.
That once you do feel okay and you get your life sorted out, you have so much more energy that you could put out there towards where you want to head. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really interesting to hear of that kind of transition from, festival party to kind of deep psychonaut. You want to just go internal and kind of learn more about what's going on inside you. Like, is it really about work still for you at this point, or is it kind of an exploration, or is it a little bit of both?
Definitely both. It's definitely both. And it's not, on the spectrum of, microdosing to a DMT, meeting the alien mother and all of that. I'm okay with somewhere in between as like a place to land every now and then, I don't need to blow my, consciousness apart each time. I kind of think about it like and this is something I think that people should maybe investigate more. I don't know. I think that when you have those like the anxieties and the depressions and the, imposter syndrome, things like that. Sometimes what you experience, sometimes the most psychedelic part of a psychedelic experience is the absence of the bullshit, where it's just you get down to being a living being and you're out of your own way. And that to me is like the most valuable part. I mean, I'm not looking to win an award by eating 20 grams, and, God bless those folks. And every so often I like to go deep, but each time you kind of go in, it's like an exploration because you don't know what you're getting out of it. But when you learn, I've had enough funky experiences where I'm able to navigate the not so beautiful and turn it into at least a lesson. It's an interesting thing. One of the things I've had to deal with, I feel, after doing a bunch of it, is you really start to appreciate that place. And here, the traffic, the minutia, the BS of, just the hustle and bustle of things really just becomes a bummer. It's like there's a better place, but you can't exist constantly there. So it's like you got to bring back with you some souvenirs every time you go, so you could kind of look to them when things get gnarly here, and you're like, yeah, I remember that, and those are those nice lessons that we get. So, look, I do believe that my personal depression, anxiety, panic, whatever, to me, it's like high cholesterol or high blood pressure or whatever. Like, it's a lifelong thing. I do believe it's like a chemical thing, and I'm going to have to deal with it. It's something that, but at least I know how to deal with it now. At least I know how to address it and feel it coming. And, it's given me the tools to kind of like, I see it approaching or whatever, and I'm able to deflect, or I'm able to, whereas before it's kind of like a fog rolling in and it just stays in town for a couple weeks and then rolls out. So it's always going to be the work, but I enjoy it. I enjoy the work. I think one side effect to doing the work is I don't have a lot of tolerance for people who don't do the work. It doesn't have to be psychedelic, but do your work. At PS 2023, there was these guys that had really cool t-shirts, and one of them just said, like, own your own shit. And I love that because I think that's so true, and I have, and I continue to. And it's not always easy, but that's the work part of it,
Right. Like, it's very easy to have, one or two DMT or ayahuasca experiences and then think you're the absolute shit.
Yeah.
The harder thing is to just recognize that you engaging with that material is a lifelong process.
Yeah.
Never really stops.
One of the first solo mushroom trips I did was easily one of the most beautiful and important moments in my life. And it was just overwhelmingly just peaceful and calm and intense and freeing and clarifying all at the same time. And what was cool about it was this excellent playlist was playing. It was a gorgeous fall day, and I was in a space that was bright, windows open. There's a raging river to my right outside, and to my left is this speaker at a perfect volume. Everything was just perfect. And it was playing these songs that were, a lot of climax and tension and release and just beautiful. And each song essentially was like a little vignette, like a little short story that I would go on. And it was just nothing more, nothing less. And I prefer getting to that place where the earth clock doesn't make sense anymore and doesn't matter. I know you know what I mean by that. There's like the concept of time is like, what the hell? I don't give a shit. It's numbers on a circle,
Right.
I love that because I feel like anxiety is like a thing where it's like, we're always rushing. And this is like, just chill out, take your time. And I had these like little short story experiences through my life, and like went back and just cleaned out a ton of clutter and cried a ton and had serious work done that was much needed, decades needed, And I left there with a lot of very profound realizations for myself that I still think about every day. And if I get wrapped up in, tension and anxiety and stuff, I go back to those moments and I remember them. So I don't even remember what the point of this was, but it's just a thing of like, the next time I did it, it was extremely terrifying. Like where I had to like turn to the person I was with and I'm like, I'm not doing well at the moment. And I thought a lot about death, not me dying, but just the concept of death and loss and stuff like that. It had a very like, I never achieved full liftoff and was in this little limbo space there. And it was equally as profound, but it was just different work, you know? And it really, it's incredible the way that like you don't get what you want each time, but you definitely get what you need for sure. And I think it's that surrendering to like, I'm in, whatever happens, I'm in.
Yeah. Right. I think that's a really good way to put it. You have no idea what will happen in these sessions ever.
Right.
And being ready for very weird is a good idea. And just whatever comes up, right? It could be super normal too, right? You're just dealing with biographical stuff that's just, you're kind of getting forced to encounter it. But yeah, it could get really strange. It could be really normal. And I think there's a metaphor here for life, Mike, around, it's a Terence McKenna line. I think he said something like the primary task of us in the future is going to be increasing how comfortable we are with increasing uncertainty over time. And I think that plays out with, the news these days. It plays out with our careers, our lives, all that kind of stuff. Uncertainty is really important concept.
It sure is. And it's I think probably one of the issues I have with most authority or politics or politicians or whatever is they have this inability to say, I don't know. And like it's some sign of weakness or something, where I feel like it's a strength if you say you don't know. At least you admit it and then you're open to learning, And I never had any profound experiences on Lexapro or, Guinness or, Xanax or anything like that. So that's to me, and it's to be taken seriously. I think, I don't think it's for everyone. I really don't. And I don't have a problem saying that. I think it's definitely something where like, I see people talking other people into psychedelics and it's like, what are you doing? Like, if someone's apprehensive, like the apprehension doesn't like go away once they take it, like you want that person to feel wholeheartedly ready for what they're about to experience.
Major proposition.
Yeah. And once
right?
you're in,
like,
I've been talking about it on stage where I ask if anybody's ever done psychedelics. And I make the analogy of like, it's like getting on a plane and, sometimes you're upgraded to first class and you have all the blankets and your favorite cocktail and you're watching your favorite movie and you lounge back and it's a smooth, beautiful flight. And then sometimes you're in the last row in the middle seat with two screaming babies that are, throwing up and farting the whole time. And you can't even take your coat off and you got to pee and all this uncomfortable. And either way, the plane took off and like, you got to ride it out, So you got to be ready for that last row experience, And if you can't deal with that last row experience, then it's, maybe you should take the bus.
Right. I have some friends who aren't ready for that, big experience, like a kind of large LSD experience or even MDMA for that matter. And I don't blame them.
Yeah.
I want people to be aware that it's available if they need it, but I'm never like, you need to do MDMA right now, or you need, to eat a 10 strip right now. Like, I think that's kind of inappropriate behavior. And I generally agree with you. We shouldn't be like pushing people and trying to talk them into it over time. It's a good way to just, I don't know, turn people off, I suppose, and potentially do some harm.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Like, let people find it themselves, There's enough ways to, if you're curious, I'm sure everybody's one or two friends away from someone who's experienced at this point, I just love that it's okay to talk about now. Like, I genuinely I love talking about it. because you find the people at our frequency quickly, and we can talk about the things that have, been transformative and have been helpful, and takes a lot of, and another thing too is it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, you take stuff and it may be horrific, but the next time it may be the most transcendent thing you could ever experience. It's just a matter of, if you are ready for the trip, then buy the ticket. But it's been an incredible experience for me personally. And again, I don't give medical advice or anything like that, but for me, that opened me up to get as much as I could out of therapy and out of talking and out of writing and out of the things that should have been easier all along. So to me, it was like a nice, erase the chalkboard, blow the dust off the mirror kind of thing, and continues to be.
Right. I want to give you some credit too, Mike, this idea of getting people in your audience to say, raise their hand if they've tried psychedelics, and people seeing each other in the audience, and then people perhaps after the show having meaningful, important conversations. I think that's a big deal. Or seeing that some people, they might look like a doctor. They might actually be a doctor.
Sure.
That validates the concept and helps encourage people to, look deeper into it if it's what they want.
And listen, I think it's one finger on the hand of potential help for people. It doesn't have to be psychedelics. It could be therapy. It could be exercise. It could be hypnotherapy. It could be just knowing someone else feels the way you do. It is sometimes enough. So yeah, talking about it, but making it approachable and fun versus terrifying is something that I hope to continue doing. But it is neat. It's funny you bring that up, because I've had people come up after shows and they're just like, I'm really going to look into ketamine now. I have PTSD. I've got this, I've got that. And I'm like, you should also look into the David Lynch Foundation, because David Lynch offers transcendental meditation to vets with PTSD, or, women who have experienced domestic violence, or, kids in inner city or whatever. There's so many avenues that might help people feel better. So if it'd be kind of selfish to not talk about the ones that have worked, I feel like, and the ones that haven't, for that matter.
Yeah, agreed. And people should understand there's no real answer here. The research is relatively young, and there's a long way to go for this whole project to really play out. But things are going in a really good direction, and I'm really hopeful.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and good on you for having these conversations. Thank you.
Absolutely, Mike. And thanks for your work. And I just hope more people just generally understand that this is an option. These things are options if they're trying to get well. And I also think people should understand, how to rank these things in terms of risk. And people should just be a little bit more careful about what they're doing with their bodies too, right?
100%.
Drinking. Yeah. I liked your story around a beer keg with a bunch of LSD, and that's for real. You could probably drink 20 beers, and
I promise you can.
Yeah. Not like I haven't done
it's
it.
Insane.
I mean, still do it once in a while, but it's it's not the thing you should do every weekend like some folks do.
No, of course not. Yeah, it's bad news.
Not awesome.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
True. Yeah. When you're a kid, it's not. Yeah, it'll once every now and then. It's
but. Yeah, in balance. Mike, thank you for being here, and can't wait to get this one out, and hope we can do more in the future.
Oh, absolutely. And for any of your listeners, I have a stand-up special, Don't Let Me Down, that's coming out November 9th on my YouTube channel. It's just youtube.com at Mike Finoia, Finoia. So if anybody wants to click on it, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, right on. So, I can't wait to watch it, man. It'll be really fun. Thanks again, and looking forward to more.
All right. We'll catch up soon.
And there you have it, Mike Finoia, everybody. I hope you all liked that one. Please share with a friend and let us know what you thought. Leave a review at one of our sites. It could be a Spotify review, Apple review, any kind of podcast app you're using. And we would love that. So, all right. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you on the next episode. This is Joe Moore signing off for Psychedelics Today. Until next time, everybody. Bye-bye.